15th lecture on church history. Chapter 2, The Modern Age. 1. Introduction. Number 1. The time frame of the modern age. The period is from the Treaty of Westphalia in 1648 to 1800. 1800 is when the French Revolution came to an end. Number 2. Characteristics of the modern age. In nations where the Reformation was successful, the papacy was weakened while the kingship became more powerful. They also believed in kings, which gave people more freedom in faith. The Puritan movement was born as well. Number 3. The development of enlightenment. We will first talk about enlightenment. They were able to do away with superstitions. People made efforts for the development of knowledge. They were successful in reforming laws. However, there were flaws to enlightenment. Enlightenment thinking lacked spirituality. They ignored history, emotion, and sentiment. Theology was stuck within formal logic and had no roots of people. Number 4. The Church's revival movement. Pietism emerged in Germany. In England, the Methodist movement occurred. Quietism formed within Catholicism. We will later look at each of these movements in detail. Number 2. England's Puritan movement. 1. The significance of the Puritan movement. The Puritan movement was a movement aimed at removing Catholic rituals and superstitious church cultures. The movement aimed to thoroughly reform England in terms of theology and the Puritan age starts from the time of King James I of England. Number 2. The origin of the Puritan movement. Number 1. John Hooper. John Hooper was born in 1495 and died in 1555. During the time of Henry VIII, he crossed over to the continent and learned about the Reform movement. He returned home and was against the act and was against having altars in church. In 1550, he was imprisoned when he refused to wear a uniform during his appointment. He was burned at the stake during the time of Mary I. After Hooper was gone, reformers who returned from the continent pushed for fundamental reform concerning the state religion of England. Number 3. The leaders of England's Puritan movement. Number 1. Thomas Cartwright. Thomas Cartwright was born in 1535 and died in 1603. He was a reformer from Cambridge. In 1569, Cartwright gave a lecture as theology professor. He said that the Bible is the standard of faith church government, that a Presbyterian government is the only biblical form of church government. Because of these claims, he was banished and lived in exile in Germany for 12 years. Number 2. Robert Brown. Coming from the University of Cambridge, Brown argued for an independent church government. He is the founder of the Congregational Church of England. We call people who follow his ideas independents or Brownists. They are different from Puritans. Number 4. The Puritan lifestyle. Puritans were greatly inspired by the Bible. They claimed that God's will is the greatest rule. They had high ideals for family and valued the family. They remembered Sunday in a holy way. They also praised the beauty of nature. Number 5. The history of the translation of the Bible. Puritans actively participated in translating the Bible. Number 1. The Wycliffe Bible. In 1380, John Wycliffe translated the Latin Bible to English. Number 2. The Tyndale Bible. Tyndale translated the Bible from Hebrew and Greek to English. The New Testament was completed in 1526. In 1535, the entire Old and New Testaments were completed. Number 3. The Coverdale Bible. This Bible was formed in 1535. They referred to Wycliffe's version when this Bible was being made. Number 4. The Matthew Bible. This translation of the Bible was done in 1537. Number 5. The Great Bible. The Matthew Bible was Revised Bible. Number 6. The Taverner Bible. The Taverner Bible was made in 1539. Richard Taverner edited the Matthew Bible to create the Taverner Bible. Number 7. The Geneva Bible. The Bible was translated to the Geneva Bible in 1557 and issued in 1560. Whittingham, who sought refuge in Geneva, translated the New Testament. Many Puritans enjoyed using this Bible. Number 8. The Bishop's Bible. This translation of the Bible was made in 1568. Archbishop Parker and 8 other bishops and scholars worked in its translation. Number 9. The Douay-Rheims Bible. We can call this a Catholic Bible. The New Testament translation of this Bible was done in 1582, and the Old Testament translation was finished in 1610. Number 10. The King James Version. The translation of this Bible was done in 1611. Afterwards, the King James Version became the standard English Bible. Number 6. The Westminster Assembly. The motive for the Westminster Assembly. Charles I, claiming the divine right of kings, oppressed Parliament and did not convoke Parliament from 1629 to 1640. He assembled Parliament in November 1640 because of the war against Scotland. It came to be called the Long Parliament, and the leaders of this assembly were Hampden and Pym, both advocates of a Presbyterian government. Number 2, the Assembly's objective. The purpose of the Westminster Assembly was to establish a new creed, government, and rituals, among other things. Number 3, the members of the Assembly were 121 ministers, 10 nobles, and 20 commoners. Number 4, the Assembly's resolutions. They adopted the principle of worship. They also adopted the Westminster Confession. Finally, they agreed upon the Westminster Larger Catechism and Shorter Catechism. Number 7, Oliver Cromwell. Oliver Cromwell was born in 1599 and died in 1658. He later became a member of Parliament. In the war between the King and Parliament, he led the Parliament's army to defeat the King's army. He conquered Ireland and Scotland and declared a republican government. In 1652, he became protector of the Republic to grant people religious freedom and to protect Protestants. Number 8, scholars of this age. Number 1, John Milton. John Milton was born in 1608 and died in 1674. He was a dedicated Puritan who was Oliver Cromwell's secretary. He wrote the books Paradise Lost and Paradise Regained. Number 2, John Bunyan. John Bunyan was born in 1628 and died in 1688. He was from Bedford and worked as a blacksmith. He was a Baptist who preached, and he was imprisoned for 12 years for illegal gatherings. After he was released, he continued to preach for 16 years. He wrote the book The Pilgrim's progress. Number 3. Richard Baxter. Richard Baxter was in 1615 and died in 1691. He was the army pastor for Oliver Cromwell's army. He was active in writing. He worked to reconcile Calvinism with Arminianism. His major works are Saints' Everlasting Rest and The Reformed Pastor. Number 4. John Owen. John Owen was born in 1616 and died in 1683. He was Cromwell's court pastor. He was senior pastor of the Oxford Church. He wrote The Mortification of Sin and Commentary on Hebrews. Number 5. Richard Hooker. Richard was born in 1554 and died in 1600. He was an assistant professor at the University of Oxford. Of the Laws of Ecclesiastical Polity is his famous book. Number 6. Jeremy Taylor. Jeremy Taylor was born in 1613 and died in 1667. He was a bishop of the Church of England. His major writings include The Rule and Exercises of Holy Living and The Rules and Exercises of Holy Dying. Number 7. George Herbert. George Herbert was born in 1593 and died in 1633. Attended the University of Cambridge and was called James the First. He lived a fancy life in the royal court. Herbert was a poet who wrote The Temple, a collection of poems. Number 3. The Origins of Modern Philosophy. Number 1. Science developed. 1. Nicholas Copernicus. Copernicus was born in 1473 and died in 1543. He denied the pre-existing idea of geocentrism and argued for heliocentrism. Number 2. Johannes Kepler. Kepler was born in 15, died in 1630. He studied astronomy in depth and created Kepler's laws. Number 3. Giordano Bruno. Bruno was born in 15 1648 and died in 1600. He too, like Kepler, studied astronomy in depth. Number 4. Galileo Galilei. Galileo Galilei was born in 1564 and died in 1642. He invented the telescope to prove Copernicus' theory of heliocentrism. Number 5. Isaac Newton. Newton was born in 1642 and died in 1727. He discovered the law of universal gravitation. Number 2. Philosophers and their ideas. Number 1. Francis Bacon. Francis Bacon was born in 1561 and died in 1626. He was born to an English high official, and he completed his education at the University of Cambridge. He then served at the embassy in Paris. He later worked as a lawyer, a member of the House of Commons, Attorney General, and Lord Chancellor. Let us take a look at his ideas. His ideas came from the study of inductive reasoning. He pointed out the faults of Christians, saying that Christians only insisted on theory. He said Christians were lazy in observing. He also put forth the theory of idols. He distinguished them as the idols of the tribe, idols of the cave, idols of the marketplace, and idols of the theater. Doing so, he claimed that all human beings are trapped in prejudice. Number 2. Thomas Hobbes. Thomas Hobbes was born in 1588 and died in 1679. He was the son of a pastor, and he studied at the University of Oxford. Developed his ideas while he resided in France for 20 years. His ideas were based on materialism. He said that knowledge comes from the senses, that the mind is an object too delicate to be sensed. He said that there is only a difference of degree between men and animals. Number 3. René Descartes. Descartes was born in 1596 and died in 1650. He was a French noble who traveled all around Europe to study his ideas. His famous thought is, "I think, therefore I am." Through this sentence, he emphasized direct consciousness, and he claimed the existence of God. Thinking and existence are made one by God. Descartes said, "My reasoning and the certainty of my existence ultimately depend on the existence and sincerity of God." Discourse on Method is a famous book of his. Number 4. Baruch de Spinoza. Spinoza was born in 1632 and died in 1677. As a Jew, he learned Jewish doctrines and studies. However, he was later excommunicated for having a friendly relationship with the liberals. His ideas equated nature with God. He also believed in union with God. John Locke. Locke was born in 1672 and died in 1704. He developed epistemological empirical philosophy. He believed in free will by reason, and he said the existence of God has been proven by cause and effect, that religion is rational. Number 4. Deism. Number 1. The beginnings of deism. The 16th century reformers abandoned tradition and relied on faith alone. But in the 17th century, a new theological ideology emerged in England. This new thought replaced revelation with reason and religion with morality. Deism is the belief that reason can unearth of religion. Number 2. Their beliefs. They believed in the existence of a God. The Creator put the laws of nature in place. Mankind was given a conscience and freedom. Because nature is the perfect creation of the God, there is no need for special revelation. Number 3. Key figures. Number 1. Edward Herbert, John Toland, Anthony Collins. Number 4. Conclusion. Deism could not fight against sin. With reason as the only basis, deism was ideologically active to some extent, but it later collapsed completely. Number 5. And English theologians. Next is a criticism of the wrong theology of English theologians. There was the need to defend Christianity from the attacks of deism and other ideologies. Number 1. Joseph Butler. Joseph Butler was born in 1692 and died in 1752. He graduated from the University of Oxford. Then he worked as preacher at Rolls Chapel. He served as bishop until he died in 1752. He remained celibate his entire life and immersed himself in studying ideologies. His famous work is The Analogy of Religion, which was written in 1736. Was a counter-attack against deism. He claimed that God's government found in Revelation is similar to God's government found in the natural world. Number 2. William Paley. William Paley was born in 1743 and died in 1805. He attended the University of Cambridge, where he taught for 10 years as professor. He served as clergyman of the Church of England his entire life. His major works include A View of the Evidences of Christianity, The Principles of Moral and Political Philosophy, and Natural Theology. Number 3. David Hume. David Hume was born and died in 1776. He came from Edinburgh and at first studied law. But later he switched to studying literature. He went to France to study, and after returning home, he published a treatise of human nature. We will look at his ideas. He inherited Locke's empiricism and Berkeley's subjective idealism and came up with skeptical empiricism. This later led to the development of critical philosophy. He made the distinction between perception, impression, and idea. He defined impressions as perceptions that enter with the most force and violence. Concerning idea, he said, "Ideas are all the weaker that arise when we think and debate." Number 6. Jansenism. Francis Louis XIV used the expression "I am the state" and ruled in a dictatorship. Jansenism of this time tried to revive Augustine's theology. The Roman Catholic Church persecuted them because of this. Number 1. Cornelius Jansenius. Cornelius Jansenius was born in 1585 and died in 1638. He was born in the northern region of the Netherlands and studied at the University of Louvain. He inherited the ideas of Professor Bages while he was studying there, and he came to respect and hate scholasticism. Later, he became the dean of the University of Louvain and bishop of Ypres. He wrote the book Augustine. It took him 22 years to publish the book. In 1642, Pope Urban VIII banned the book. However, his ideas spread widely. Number 2. Blaise Pascal. Pascal was born in 1623 and died in 1662. He possessed a brilliant brain. He studied math and physics from a young age. When he was 24 years old, some doctors came to cure his father's disease, and through these into contact with Jansenism. His sister, who had entered a convent, his experience with having his heart broken, and his experience of falling off a carriage were all reasons why he had a change of heart. Let us take a look at his works. He wrote the book Provincial Letters. The book was in the format of a letter written to his hometown friend. It was a satirical work about the Jesuits. This book was well received in several places. Because of it, the Jesuits were injured greatly. He also wrote the Pensées. The Pensées were an apology for Christianity, comparing Christian truth to the structure of life. Pensées are Pascal's masterpiece. Number 7. Quietism. Quietism was a mystical movement that emphasized stability. It came from Spain's Alumbrados. The key figures of Quietism are Michael Molinos, Madame Guyon, François Félinon, and Bossuet. This concludes the 15th lecture on